So as we speak this week in particular, we are seeing a very unique phenomenon overwhelm this country, and that is protests about Palestine, about Gaza, across over 24, in fact 36 campuses, including many prominent universities. There are sit-ins where hundreds, if not thousands of students are for the very first time protesting our foreign policy, protesting in particular their own institutions' investment in the country of Israel. And in the last 2-3 weeks, over 1,000 students have been arrested, almost a dozen professors have been arrested, police have been called in multiple campuses. I was actually at Yale a few days ago visiting after so many years, more than a decade, and I managed to speak at the student protest that was taking place. I have never seen a sight like this. In the main square, in the campus, there were so many students, hundreds of students protesting about Yale's investment in Israel. And as you're aware, the protests have become violent in UT Austin, in a number of places. USC, which is one of the most prestigious universities in California, they banned a hijabi speaker from speaking at the convocation. So this entire country is engulfed. You have people even calling for the National Guard to be sent in against these students. Never before have we seen this public sentiment expressed in this manner. So today, inshallah ta'ala, as you know, I like to be relevant along with being classical. Today will be a very, very relevant discussion. Inshallah, 3 quick parts. Firstly, a brief history for our benefit of student activism and student protests and the impact that it's had in America. It is important before you speak about something, you understand it. It is important before you make a verdict, you see the past and the historical realities of what you're talking about. Secondly, a little bit of sharia, like what do we say about these types of protests? And then thirdly, a bit of advice for those that are participating in these protests. So multiple universities had protests about how unfair the civil rights was at the time, and as you know, slowly but surely this provoked a national protest, and laws were passed in the 60s that eventually changed the reality of how things were in the 40s and 50s. Perhaps the most famous example of student protests in America is the Vietnam War. Over 1,000 universities participated in mass protests against the Vietnam War, and this is of course in the late 60s, early 70s. And of course the reason was very personal. America was drafting college-age students from 20 to 25. Millions of students in over 1,000 campuses, they were protesting against the government policy. And this actually led to a massive shift, especially in 1970 in Ohio, in Kent State University. Thousands of students were protesting, and the president called in the National Guard. He called in the army to protect against slogans and against, protesters of the students. The National Guard was called in. What's going to happen when you have thousands of angry students and then you have trained riflemen, trained army? What's going to happen is common sense. Eventually altercations and then punches and then this and that, and eventually, as in every such protest around the world, they never learn from history. What's going to happen? The army opens fire against their own citizens. Multiple students were killed, dozens were wounded. Iconic pictures, of course. Born then, most of us don't know this, but those pictures that were taken, they won the Pulitzer Prize. It changed the entire narrative where students are lying dead on campus. Their own army has killed them because they're protesting against their own army's policies. So this was a shifting, an entire narrative change. And people say that it was the student protests that forced President Nixon to eventually announce in 2 years after this that, okay guys, we're sorry, we're leaving, Vietnam, and we're just gonna end the entire war over there. The success of student protests was astounding in this regard. And students in Colombia, where right now we have the epicenter of the protests taking place about Gaza, in Colombia, the very same building that they took over today, that same building they took over in 1985, and they said, we don't want our university to be involved in investing in South Africa. Public pressure changes policy. Student protests against South Africa also led to a change eventually in the global reality of South African apartheid. Now, why are students in particular protesting about their universities? Because we need to understand, in America, frankly in the globe, the largest the largest endowments belong to universities. By endowments, awqaf, they took it from us. This is well known. I'm not just saying this. No, they literally took the concept of waqf from us and they then took it to a better level than we had it. And so the largest endowments in the whole world that are non-government are American universities, okay? Harvard University, I'm not allowed to praise it if you know my background, but the other university, they have $50 billion in endowment. My own alma mater, Yale, has $40 billion. Imagine, this is larger than the GDP of many countries. Harvard has 50, Yale has 40. You keep on doing the math, you get hundreds of billions of dollars American universities have. What do they do with that money? A group of regents, a group of powerful elites, they decide where to invest. And the fact of the matter, for reasons that are obvious, but I cannot be too explicit, those corporations that are internal, they put an excessively large percentage where? In Israel. This is a fact, we all know it, and this is something you can look up. These institutes, they invest billions of dollars. They invest in occupied territory. They invest in the infrastructure of this apartheid regime. So these institutes are directly bankrolling the apartheid regime over there. And so the students now are seeing what is going on, and they are incensed and they're enraged, and they're saying, we do not want our university to invest in genocide, to invest in the apartheid regime. This is why across the country, hundreds of thousands of protests are taking place, and we thank Allah for that. I participated at the protest a few days ago, and I just got a phone call yesterday. One of the major universities, subhanAllah, they took our sister's hijab, astaghfirullah. The police, they did this and they banned and whatnot. So they called me, they wanted me to speak there. So I will be going there. Unfortunately, I will not be here on Friday. I was scheduled to give the khutbah, but I believe that is a priority. They're holding a few thousand people to protest what the university did. So I'll be going there to give the khutbah over there. I personally believe, inshallah, if my niyyah is pure, I will be rewarded for this. This is a part of what we should do in this land to effect change. So this is the second point. Third and final point. Somebody will say, oh, but there are things that go on in the protest that are against Islam. For example, intermixing of men and women. For example, obviously, majority of them are not Muslims, so they're not wearing hijab, obviously. For example, there's going to be, left-wing groups that might be, even the LGBT community is very pro-Palestine, whatnot. So there's going to be those people over there as well. So they're going to say, oh, you are standing with them. And to respond to this, I acknowledge that indeed this is some of the negative. But the problem comes, why do you want to enforce this purity only when it comes to protest for a good cause? Do you not go to Kroger's? Do you not go to buy your grocery? Do you not go to work and people are dressed immodestly at work? So why is it that when it comes to a generic good cause, all of a sudden you become Mr. Muttaqi 1000%? I find a double standard. Where are you living? Which land are you living in? Open your eyes. You have to do something. And in order to come together, you all come together to pay your taxes to this country to build the roads. You pay your taxes to generic healthcare, whatever it might be. And we're cooperating for some good of the deen, of the dunya. Can't we cooperate for some good of the people of Palestine and Gaza? Even if you don't want to participate, don't make the people who do any type of enemies. Don't make it more difficult for them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to see the victory for our brothers and sisters in Palestine. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.